History is a tapestry woven with shadows and whispers. What if the greatest stories remain untold, hidden in plain sight? Please like, share, and subscribe. This season, we expose the forgotten, dissect the myths, and confront the conspiracies that shaped our world. Prepare for Histories, Mysteries, and Conspiracies Season 3, Your Father, the Devil. A Gnostic reconsideration of God, creation, and power. It is easier to deceive someone than to convince them that they have been deceived. Most commonly attributed to Mark Twain, the accusation, "Ye are of your father the devil." Those words are spoken by Jesus himself, not whispered, not hidden, not encoded into a metaphor, spoken openly. And that alone should trouble us, because Jesus is not addressing pagans. He is not speaking to outsiders. He is not condemning Rome. He is speaking to the religious, to people who believe they are following God. And yet, almost no one asks the obvious question: who is he really talking about? If God is the Father of Israel, and Jesus speaks of another Father, then either Jesus is wrong, or something fundamental about reality has been misunderstood. That single accusation opens a door most people never walk through. And once it's opened, it cannot be closed again. The hearsay. According to the Gnostics, the world you live in is not the creation of a perfect God, but rather a flawed, ignorant authority they call the Demiurge. In several Gnostic texts, this being is given a name, Yaldabaoth. Because nearly every religion begins with the same assumption: creation reflects its creator. If the world is good, the creator must be good. If the world is sacred, the creator must be sacred. But the Gnostics asked a different question. They looked at decay, at suffering, at death, and they asked, does this really look like the work of a perfect being? They concluded that the material world was not holy, it was flawed, not a gift, but a confinement, a prison, and prisons require wardens. The Gnostics believed this world was created by a lesser being, not evil in the modern sense, but ignorant, arrogant, blind to the greater reality above it, a being they called the Demiurge, a creator who mistook power for divinity and demanded obedience in place of truth. The shared assumption. The Holy Bible stands at the foundation of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Together, these traditions shape the beliefs of nearly 4.5 billion people, almost half of the world's population. They differ in doctrine. They differ in law. They differ in ritual and theology, but they share something far more important. They share an assumption that the creator of this world is good. That creation itself is fundamentally sacred. That obedience to the creator is virtue. From this assumption flows everything else: law, sin, salvation, judgment. The world may be fallen, but it was once good. Humanity may be flawed, but creation was divine. Or at least, that is what we are told. Because buried beneath that shared foundation lies something else, something older, something erased, something that tells a very different story about who created this world and why. The interruption. In 1945, near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, a local farmer made an accidental discovery. While digging for fertilizer, he uncovered a sealed clay jar. Inside were not scrolls, not fragments, but 13 leather-bound codices, ancient books. Within them were 52 texts written in Coptic, translated from even older Greek originals. Texts no church recognized. Texts no canon included. These were not alternative gospels preserved by tradition. They were unknown, not lost accidentally. Hidden, buried, suppressed, and that distinction matters. Lost things disappear by chance. Hidden things disappear by intent. These writings described a form of early Christianity that did not align with Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. They contradicted all of them, and if taken seriously, they would shatter the central assumption shared by every Abrahamic faith, that the God of the Bible is the highest God, Who were the Gnostics? Gnosticism was a collection of diverse religious and philosophical movements that were highly syncretic, meaning they blended elements from various contemporary traditions. The primary religions involved in the formation of and influenced by Gnostic ideas were Christianity. This was perhaps the most prominent influence. Many Gnostic groups identified as Christians and produced alternative gospels and texts, such as the Gospel of Thomas and the Apocryphon of John, which offered different interpretations of Jesus' teachings. Early Christian leaders ultimately condemned these ideas as heresy. Gnosticism incorporated many stories and figures from the Hebrew Bible into its mythology, though often with a negative interpretation of the Jewish God, whom they often referred to as the Demiurge, a lower, flawed creator deity. Some Gnostic texts, like those found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, are thought to have origins in Jewish sects. Greek philosophy, particularly Middle Platonism's concept of a supreme, remote god, and a lesser creator, Demiurge, heavily influenced Gnostic cosmology and its dualistic worldview, spirit as good, matter as evil. Elements from various Asian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, and Syrian religions, including astrological ideas and mystery cult rituals, were incorporated into different Gnostic systems. The ancient Persian religion's emphasis on cosmic dualism, the struggle between light and darkness, is reflected in some Gnostic beliefs, particularly in later movements like Manichaeism. Gnosticism was not a single, unified religion, but a broad term for these varied groups that shared a common emphasis on personal, esoteric knowledge, gnosis, as the path to salvation from the material world. What is Gnosticism? In Gnostic cosmology, the true God, the unknown God, is also known as the monad, which is supreme, infinite, and perfect. Pure consciousness, pure light. The monad is the supreme Godhead who sits in the highest source of the pleroma. The pleroma is the fullness of the divine, or better understood as a region of light. The heavenly pleroma is the center of divine life, a region of light above. The term is not to be understood spatially. Our world, occupied by spiritual beings such as eons, eternal beings, and sometimes archons. The term pleroma is thus a central element of Gnostic cosmology. The supreme light or consciousness descends through a series of stages, gradations, worlds, or hypostases, becoming progressively more material and embodied. In time, it will turn around to return to the One, retracing its steps through spiritual knowledge and contemplation. From the pleroma emanated divine beings known as eons. In certain Gnostic texts, the hermaphroditic Eon Barbelo was the first emanated being. Various interactions with the monad occur which result in the emanation of successive pairs of eons, often in male-female pairings called syzygies. These beings also dwell within the pleroma. The eons as a totality constitute the pleroma, the region of light. The lowest regions of the pleroma are closest to the darkness, which is the physical world. But then, something went terribly wrong. The final eon was Sophia, or wisdom. Sophia is occasionally referred to by the Hebrew equivalent of Achamoth. Sophia wished to conceive without her counterpart. The result was something malformed, something incomplete. In most, if not all, versions of the Gnostic myth, Sophia births the Demiurge, who in turn brings about the creation of materiality. Sophia, in this highly patriarchal narrative, is described as unruly and disobedient, which is due to her bringing a creation of chaos into the world. The creation of the Demiurge was an act done without her counterpart's consent. Because of the predefined hierarchy between them, this action contributed to the narrative that she was unruly and disobedient. The entity known as the Demiurge found himself outside of the pleroma, alone, and most importantly, cut off from the true God. The Sophia story is not about sin. Rather, it is about ignorance giving birth to authority, and authority demanding obedience to cover its blindness. The Demiurge made itself the highest authority and crafted its own universe. According to Gnostic teachings, the physical realm was fashioned by this lesser, ignorant creator who mistook his power for divinity and constructed the material world as a containment system for the divine light present in human beings. The term demiurge derives from the Latinized form of the Greek term demiurgos, literally public or skilled worker. In the Secret Book of John, which is part of the Nag Hammadi library, names this entity as Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth has many names and goes by several. Saklas is Syriac for Saikla, the foolish one, or Samael in Aramaic Samael, the blind god, who is sometimes ignorant of the superior god and sometimes opposed to it. Thus, in the latter case, he is correspondingly malevolent. Other names or identifications are Ahriman, El, Satan, and Yahweh. Not necessarily evil in the modern sense, but ignorant and arrogant, blind to the greater reality beyond itself. The inferiority of the Demiurge's creation may be compared to the technical inferiority of a work of art, painting, sculpture, etc., to the thing the art represents. A creator who mistook power for divinity, a ruler who believed himself supreme because he knew nothing higher existed. They viewed the god as a jealous, vengeful god whom demanded praise and sacrifice. The Demiurge is responsible for creating humankind, trapping elements of the pleroma stolen from Sophia within human bodies. The Demiurge created a group of co-actors named archons who preside over the material realm and, in some cases, present obstacles to the soul seeking ascent from it. In late antiquity, some variants of Gnosticism use the term archon to refer to several servants of the Demiurge, or even as a term applied to authority. Moral judgments of the Demiurge vary from group to group within the broad category of Gnosticism, ranging from viewing materiality as inherently evil to seeing it as merely flawed, as good as its passive constituent matter allows. What about Jesus? Well, Jesus is where this story becomes dangerous. Jesus is identified by some Gnostics as an embodiment of the Supreme Being who became incarnate to bring gnosis to the earth, while others adamantly denied that the Supreme Being came in the flesh, claiming Jesus to be merely a human who attained enlightenment through gnosis and taught his disciples to do the same. To the Gnostics, Jesus was not sent to die for sins. He was sent to reveal the truth. Some believed he was a divine eon who descended into the material world to awaken humanity. Others believed he was a man who attained gnosis and taught others to do the same. Theirs believed that Jesus was divine, but did not have a physical body, reflected in the later Docetist movement. Among the Mandaeans, Jesus was considered a Messiah Kadaba, or false Messiah, who perverted the teachings entrusted to him by John the Baptist. But nearly all agreed on one thing. Jesus did not come to reinforce the authority of the ruler of this world. He came to expose it. Interestingly, Zen Buddhism and Gnosticism share striking conceptual parallels, primarily centered on the idea that human suffering stems from ignorance and can only be overcome through direct experiential insight. Salvation or liberation is achieved through internal revelation and meditative practice rather than through external faith, rigid dogma, or public rituals alone. The shocking identity. Here is where the Gnostic story becomes truly explosive. They identified the Demiurge with the God of the Old Testament, the jealous God, the wrathful God, the God who demands obedience, the God who says, "I am the Lord and there is no other." According to the Gnostics, that was not truth. It was ignorance speaking as authority. Scripture answered back, and here is where everything becomes uncomfortable, because the Bible itself contains echoes of this idea. Jesus says, "Ye are of your father the devil, he was a murderer from the beginning." John 8:44. He also says, "Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. John 12:31. Paul writes, "The ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit now at work in the disobedient." Ephesians 2:2. And again, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the world rulers of this darkness." Ephesians 6:12. These are not Gnostic texts. They are canonical, and yet they speak the same language. Mind over matter. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666, Revelations 13:18. Traditionally, this verse is believed to refer to gematria. Gematria is an ancient practice of assigning a numerical value to a name, word, or phrase by reading it as a number, or sometimes by using an alphanumeric cipher. So, most commonly, people believe that if you add up the letters in a name of the suspected beast, the name would add up to 666. However, within this verse, it specifically calls for wisdom, or perhaps Sophia. In the modern age, we have discovered elements, one of which is carbon-12. Carbon-12 is one of 5 elements in the human DNA. Carbon-12 is the most abundant of the 2 stable isotopes of the element carbon, accounting for 98.89% of carbon. It just so happens that human DNA is composed of 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons, which equates to 666. The Gnostics believe the material world was the creation of a flawed entity, thus the human body being flawed as well, which is why it is mind over matter. More from the Bible. "The Lord created me at the beginning of his work. Before the depths I was brought forth. When he established the heavens, I was there." Proverbs 8:22, 27. Wisdom exists before creation. She participates in creation. She speaks independently. She delights in humanity. "The Lord founded the earth by wisdom." Proverbs 3:19. Wisdom is a creative principle, not an attribute like kindness. In 1 Corinthians 1:24, the Apostle Paul calls Christ the power of God and the wisdom, Sophia, of God, which links Jesus directly to this concept. She is a breath of the power of God, a pure emanation of the glory of the Almighty. The wisdom of Solomon, 7:25-26. That language is shockingly close to later Gnostic descriptions. Jesus says, "Wisdom is justified by her children," Matthew 11:19 and Luke 7:35. Wisdom is still female here. Sophia is not named as a goddess in the Bible and the Apocrypha, but she appears repeatedly as divine, pre-existent wisdom, later absorbed into Torah in Judaism and into Christ in Christianity, while Gnosticism preserved her as a distinct being. While in the Dead Sea Scrolls she survives only indirectly as hidden mystery and revealed knowledge, reflecting an intentional suppression of independent wisdom theology. The scholarly view. Biblical scholars, drawing on historical and archaeological evidence, widely agree on the following points. The earliest Israelite religion was likely polytheistic or henotheistic. In the Canaanite pantheon, El was the chief supreme creator god. Yahweh likely originated as a distinct regional deity, perhaps a war or weather god from the Midian region. Over time, the worship of Yahweh was adopted by the Israelites and eventually merged with the identity of El. This process led to Yahweh absorbing El's attributes, titles, and role as the universal creator. This shift culminated in the strict monotheism characteristic of post-exilic Judaism, codified in scriptures that emphasized Yahweh as the one and only God. As stated in Isaiah 45:5-7, "I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me there is no God. I will strengthen you, though you have not acknowledged me, so that from the rising of the sun to the place of its setting people may know there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other." I form the light and create darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things. This development is seen as an internal theological and historical progression, not as evidence for Gnosticism, which emerged much later in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. Not an ending. The Gnostic texts claim that Earth itself is the domain of the Demiurge, a counterfeit kingdom, a false creation. And if that is true, then the question is no longer who is God. The question becomes, who have we been obeying? And what happens when the truth is remembered? Whether the Gnostics were right is not the question. The real question is this: why did their ideas terrify those in power? Because if the people do wake up, the system may just collapse. Baraba. Select an option for more.